Ring the bell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slam Society, and welcome to our retro review show here of King of the Ring, WWF King of the Ring, 1993, from June 13th, 93, from Fairborn, Ohio, at the Nutter Center, in front of 6,500 fans. Who will be the king? Be part of the coronation. We certainly were here today in preparation for the latest WWE King and Queen of the Ring pay-per-view. I'm Karlifornia alongside Jooseyboy. How you doing, Jooseyboy?
Yeah, not too bad, bro. I tell you what, interesting walk down memory lane. King of the Ring 93. This happened the year I was born. What a show. I mean, obviously we're going to be discussing the differences between like now and then. We're going to be discussing the differences, I guess, between the WWF at the time and the rest of wrestling at the time. I think it's an interesting time capsule. And hopefully, if you guys out there enjoy these retro reviews going forward, we will continue to do them. So, California's usually our resident historian. Obviously, this King of the Ring, the first one that would become a tradition going forward. The old adage was that Vince McMahon didn't like tournaments, but here we were with a single elimination tournament. And yeah, I loved the show. I thought it was fun watching it.
I had fun too. I found myself laughing quite a bit as the show opened with Vince McMahon yelling in my headphones.
Yeah, really screaming.
In the background, very royal and prestigious music playing. In the opening round matchups, Mr. Hughes. Like, I really thought it was quite interesting and fun to hear Vince so enthused, considering he actually wasn't on commentary at this point in time. But after that prestigious music was playing, the next music that we heard was like, it sounded like a soundtrack from a Super Nintendo game. As we opened up the show, saw the live crowd, 6,500 of them. Jim Ross, Randy Savage, and Bobby the Brain Heenan are on commentary. That's where I'm smiling, because that's the first thing I really see. Dude, come on. What a trio of a commentary team.
Like the commentary as well. I mean, we've talked a little bit here and there whenever it comes up about, how Bobby Heenan was really a genius. And, most channels of this nature and wrestling podcasts are going to say the same thing. They're going to say Bobby Heenan is just gold, and of course he was. Might as well note it while we're talking about it. The commentary was just so, it was different from the way that the WWE does commentary now, and different from how it was in the Attitude Era, and it was different from the eras before it, such as, the 80s with Gorilla Monsoon and so forth. You really had a blend of this. We don't really have color commentators these days in WWE anymore. We don't really. We have analysts, I guess, but we don't have color commentators. And what I mean by that is that Bobby Heenan and Randy Savage were both doing color. You kind of had a babyface color commentator in Randy Savage and a heel color commentator in Bobby the Brain. And then you had Jim Ross, who was doing play-by-play. And gosh, Jim Ross was just incredible on this show, just in his prime as an announcer. He really did a great job of keeping everything in line for the viewers at home about what's going on in the tournament, where everything is, how the rules affect what's happening as we're watching. And it's gonna sound odd to say because it was 1993, but the stories and the actual tournament itself were somewhat separate. The treatment of everything in the ring was very sports-like, and the treatment of things outside of the ring was more entertainment. And other thing I want to say before we get into the card is I loved the graphics. I loved the set for the show. I thought that simple, understated, less is more. It looked regal and it looked like Major League because they didn't do too much to dress the arena. They just lit it well. you know, WWF, now WWE, they've always had great rings, and they've got the outside setup always looks really great. So Arena was quite stripped back to what you would start to see in years to come, but all the same, it's still just the whole arena and the set just had a great feel to it, I thought, California.
Yes, no, it was they seemed to make it feel like it was a very meaningful event. I was smiling so much seeing these three, thinking to myself, like, you're not going to get anything like that again. And I hate to be one of those people that, says things like that, but Randy Savage, all right, is on commentary. Okay. Bobby Heenan on commentary.
Mm.
This would be like if you could do it these days, maybe Jim Ross would be Michael Cole. Randy Savage maybe like an LA Knight, and Bobby Heenan would be Paul Heyman or something like that. If you could make a comparison, I think. But even when you do that, still is light years less than what we got here. And then boom, Razor Ramon's theme song hits. Dum 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 bum bump. And here he comes with this surly looking attitude. And I'm like, man, you just think about the difference between wrestling then and now. This is a guy who's only going to have one match on this show. He's not even going to get past the first round. And he is a huge part of the product and the show. And it's just these characters that they had in the WWF. And I'm going to keep harping on that as we move forward. Then all of a sudden, I hear, Howard Finkel on ring announcing duties. Razor, like he is brilliant, bro. It's just the whole situation that is in front of us with those commentators, the ring announcer. Here comes Razor. I'm laughing my ass off, even though nothing's funny. I'm just so entertained by it. But anyway, the first matchup of the first round of the King of the Ring 1993 tournament, Jooseyboy, Razor Ramon, Bret the Hitman Hart. Jooseyboy, what did you think of the opening match?
So the opening match is, a real great opportunity to talk about some more running themes that are interesting, I think, throughout this show in a positive way. Um, you talked about the characters that everybody has, and I think, the important thing is regardless of the character or the level of seriousness that that character is presented at on the show, I notice that everybody is distinct. You know, we always talk about how in WWE and AEW and other companies today, it seems like there's a bunch of people on the roster who are carbon copies of each other. Their outfits are the same, their ring gear is the same. They do a lot of the same moves, but those moves go beyond basics like arm drags and hip tosses. Like a lot of people have the same signature moves or the same strong moves when it comes into the nitty gritty of a match. And here you had very distinct uh, differences in each person that was performing on the show. And so even though this was a tournament, the different combinations made each match intriguing. And every match had its own feel. And I do feel like that was perhaps best exemplified in this opening match here between Bret and Razor Ramon. Razor comes out. He has a very flashy, flamboyant character. He has the full creative treatment from WWF, the lighting, the theme song. And Scott Hall did such a great job of really throwing himself into that character. Sort of, and you'll see throughout the way that he actually wrestles in the match. I think you'll agree, California, that Razor Ramon especially, but both guys in general, they play their characters throughout the match. Their characters experience the match. They're not just going through a bunch of different stuff, trying to have a good match or trying to get from point A to point B. They're their characters are actually going through the journey of the match. So Razor Ramon doesn't stop being Razor Ramon towards the end of the match. He's still Razor Ramon. He sells like Razor Ramon. When he's in pain, it's distinct to Razor Ramon, how it looks when he's in pain, in comparison to Brett or the other people on the show. It may seem like I'm really oversimplifying what we're looking at here, but I do that to say that I think some of that today, some of that contrast and some of that interesting differences between opponents, it is missing in wrestling today still to some degree. This was a very physical match. It was logical. They told the story that Razor Ramon was really going to brutalize Bret Hart, and he was going to kick Bret around and to knock him around a bit, and he didn't give a crap about Bret's wrestling acumen or what family Bret came from. He was looking to become king of the ring and add one more piece of gold to his collection, he being Razor Ramon. And I thought that they did a very, very good job of making it seem like even though he didn't win, Razor Ramon is still a threat to Bret Hart now and in the future. I gave this match an A-. I thought that it was a really great example of how to get people interested in a long-term story that's going to be occurring throughout the show. And both these guys in this opening match here, they knew what they were doing. They set out to set the stage for everything that was going to come afterwards. I think that Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, when he went backstage after this match at King of the Ring, I hope he was very pleased with his efforts, and because I thought that even though he only appeared once on the show, considering he was one of their top guys at the time, it was a memorable appearance. It felt like one of the more important things on the show, simply because it was Razor Ramon, because that's star power for you.
Yeah, first thing that I noticed when this match was about to begin, I was like, is that Mike Chioda? And it was Mike Chioda, the referee, Mike Chioda, very young at the time, hell of a mullet, loving the mullet, Mike. That really made me laugh because it's like, wow, he's like such a oh God, it's spring chicken. That's what I would say Mike Chioda was here. But such characters, these two, despite Brett being more about in-ring, technician. But again, I like to say this, if you saw a silhouette of every person in this tournament, Tatanka, Hacksaw, Mr. Hughes, Lex Luger, you know who it is when you see the silhouette. That's what kind of makes it what it is. Love the feeling out process between the two of them and the character work through the feeling out process with Razor Ramon and the facial expressions. This is stuff that really means a lot to me. Brett versus Razor could be a match in the finals of the King of the Ring, but here we have it as the quarterfinals here, which I thought was like, this is two heavy hitters going at it right here. And I do miss when King of the Ring was 3 matches in one night. I think it kind of makes it a bit better in that way, because it seems like, you got to go through 3 grueling contests to become King of the Ring. Now you can't do that because they also have added the Queen of the Ring, which is a shame, but that's just the way it is. Brett, again, it's been so long since I've watched a Bret Hart match. And I've seen a lot of Bret Hart matches, but when you've been so long and you've watched a lot of the current stuff, you feel Bret's selling through his whole body when you watch him sell anything. Razor stomped on his hands at one stage, and that was implemented in further matches. I love that Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary never picks a winner convincingly. He's always just... he says this person, but he's like, no, I've decided on this person. But then he's chastising JR and Savage over them making their choices whilst the first match is going on. That's just great stuff.
Yeah. The commentators are characters on the show as well.
Yeah, and that's what I really loved about it. And I loved about Bobby. He would never pick someone. And then when they finally won the tournament, he would be like, yep, I told you the whole time, even though he
Mm.
never picked them the whole time. Brett was firing back at one stage. Um, the fans in attendance, this is something that I noticed. They're just cheering or booing. They're
Mm.
just enjoying the show. No chance, no
Yeah,
chance. Maybe hit man.
that's
Maybe
right. Yeah.
Hogan. No, this is awesome. None of that annoying, boring bullshit. They're just people enjoying a show, not trying to get themselves over. Brett had something to prove here. We both know it, Juicy Boy. What happened at WrestleMania 9 was bullshit. We know it's bullshit. Brett
Yeah,
knew this was all set up for
absolutely.
him to show Hogan up, and boy, did he show him up. And we'll get to that later on. Reversing the Razor's edge into the backslide, and then pushing his foot on the top rope to go for that inside cradle for that near fall. Oh, we almost had him. But then to counter that top rope back suplex into a pin. I stole that many a time when I wrestled because I saw the reaction it would get. Brett wins, and Razor Ramon is beside himself that he did not win the match. That's what I liked whenever someone lost, they were beside themselves because they really wanted to win the King of the Ring. Let's move forward, Juice Boy.
Mm.
We watched a version of this show that was the actual pay-per-view. Whereas on the network, they cut out a lot of these segments just because that's just the way it is. But next was Undertaker and Mr. Hughes confrontation from the previous WWF superstars, where Mr. Hughes had stolen the urn with Harvey Whippleman, excuse me, and the help of Giant Gonzalez. Um, and from just seeing that little segment before the next matchup took place, Juicy Boy, I thought to myself, you know what? Mr. Hughes was a great character. Man, again, silhouette, Mr. Hughes, you know it's him. You see someone going like this,
Yeah.
Mr. Hughes's face. Okay, so the next matchup, bro, Mr. Hughes takes on Mr. Perfect, the battle of the Misters. All we need is Mr. Wonderful here for a triple threat match, but look, bro. When I saw this on the card, I was like, "Wow, I'm interested to see Mr. Hughes and Mr. Perfect. How is that going to work?" But you know what? Mr. Hughes really put on his working shoes here. He's got the urn. Mr. Perfect comes out right. This is a wrestler, so in shape, in like a good outfit that makes him look like a real
Yeah.
wrestler. Handsome son of the bitch, very handsome man. Uh, Popped early for Bobby accidentally calling JR Monsoon, but getting into the match, Hughes moved so quickly for a big big bastard that size, took a sweet arm drag from Hennig early on. And when I see Mr. Hughes, when he's large and in charge in the matches, Juicy Boy, I think to myself, he poses for the camera with that semicircle frown on his face, and he's wearing the suspenders and a tie. I'm like, what kind of human being is that? It really.
Mm.
He's always in character the whole match, constantly, constantly, constantly. Love the spot where Perfect was whipped very hard into the corner, and I don't know what kind of flip he did afterward, but he flipped right out of that corner. During the match, Brett is asked a question from JR backstage. I liked that touch.
Mm.
Liked the fact that Bobby called him the 14th of 13 children. I don't even know what that means, but it was still funny to me. When Mr. Hughes pulled himself on the rope, his facial expression finally changed because something really bad happened to his lower extremities. Mr. Hughes, I'm very impressed with this big man, okay? Because he took a high back body drop from Mr. Perfect at one stage, and I did not think that that was going to happen whatsoever. Then he got DQ'd with the urn, the usage of the urn. We're thinking about the urn. He's got the urn. He was desperate. He used the urn. He shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And now he's disappointed that he lost the match. But Mr. Perfect goes through. Juicy, but what did you think?
Well, there's a couple of excuse me. There's a couple of interesting things from this one. I think the reason why a lot of people don't think that Mr. Hughes was a very good wrestler is because they had never actually seen him have many matches before he actually assumed the Mr. Hughes persona. He was often used, as we all know, as a bodyguard henchman type, and usually stood on the outside or took bumps and stuff like that. But as JR alluded to in the course of the match, this guy's an ex-football player. He was trained the old school way. Um, and he does have a history in the business beyond being Mr. Hughes. It's just he's most well known for being Mr. Hughes, and why not Mr. Hughes is a sitcom. All right. So obviously Mr. Perfect is one of my favorites of all time. He came out, as you said, he looks the picture of a classic professional wrestler. Mr. Hughes, in a different way, also the classic picture of a professional wrestler. He has a character. The glasses never left his face during the match.
I didn't even realize.
The suspenders somehow never left his shoulders during the match, even though he's wrestling this very physical match. There's something I want to note here. There's a couple of things we're talking about, and some of you at home might be going, "Oh, well, if they did that today, you guys kind of might poo-poo it, or you might." And it is true that there are certain things where if they repeated the exact same angle, we might not have the same reaction. But I think it's important to note that there was a different audience at the time that this show occurred, and a different context to the way a lot of things were being done. And the angle with Mr. Hughes getting disqualified with the urn, that's a great way to stop Mr. Hughes from having to take a pin, while also showing that he was formidable enough to be entered into the tournament in the first place. B, you're reminding people of your ongoing storyline that he has the urn, and this is 1993, so at that time, whoever had control of the urn had control of the Undertaker, so to speak. Number 4, the disqualification getting Mr. Perfect through to the next round. It allows Mr. Perfect to show that he's got some fighting spirit because he was pissed off at the way that he got through. And B, it plausibly allows that he has not taken as much damage as other competitors. When Mr. Hughes hit Mr. Perfect with the urn, you'll note, and it might sound silly, but I'm being dead serious, he hit Mr. Perfect with the urn very hard. Very, very hard. Mr. Perfect didn't put his hands up. It was not pulled in any way. Obviously there was a certain part of Mr. Perfect's head Mr. Hughes probably was making sure that he hit, but you'll agree with me, bro. He hit him with that thing hard. Yeah. And, Mr. Perfect sold it as if he had been bashed on the head with a heavy metal object. He was dazed coming out of the ring, even though he was pissed off. Again, it's storytelling. Mr. Perfect now has to go forward in this tournament with that injury to the head. And you've continued on all this other shit that's going on with Mr. Hughes and Paul Bearer and John Gonzalez and all that stuff that's going on. And Whippleman, of course. I love
fucking Whippleman, mate. He's a troublemaker.
This match is going to get a C- from me. Spoiler alert, C- is the lowest I go in this entire show as far as match rating.
Oh, hello. Moving forward, Mean Gene backstage with Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna. I loved the layout, dude. They even had a bonsai tree. And also there was some oriental music in the background. I thought that's a very nice touch. Very simple, so good. Character. Mr. Fuji's over. We know all about who Mr. Fuji is and what he's all about. Same with Yokozuna. Loving it. Let's move forward into the next round, Juicy Boy. Bam Bam Bigelow versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Another quarterfinal match here for King of the Ring 93. What did you think?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Bam Bam Bigelow. I found it amusing when I was watching him enter to the ring. I actually just listened to that theme music that very day while I was editing.
Bam, bam.
While I was editing for the GPT Pro Patreon show that's coming up. And then I saw later that night watching this, him actually use the theme. I love the theme. I think that it suits him really well. It's got an aura of intimidation and it adds to his presence. Again, you've got two very distinct characters here, two very distinct wrestlers with very contrasting looks, styles, and what have you. Um, this particular match was a blend of impressive athleticism from big man on the part of Bam Bam, mixed with classic showmanship from Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw was in good shape, and you could tell that if he wanted to, he could do more than he did in the match. But his
Mm.
job was to be Hacksaw Jim Duggan, so that's the way the match was worked. Um, Duggan puts up enough of a fight at certain points to keep the match engaging. But ultimately, I think that most people, even though they wanted Hacksaw to win, I think a lot of people in the audience weren't surprised that Bam Bam got the win
Ah, of
because
course.
he's just so physically imposing. And again, that's why we talk about in our current reviews. Sometimes a foregone conclusion is not a bad thing, but it's the way that you get there. So
Mm.
I rated the match a C plus. I thought it was fun and it didn't outstay its welcome either.
Yes, definitely. I thought it was going to be interesting because I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen Bam Bam and Hacksaw go one on one. The thing about Hacksaw is it doesn't matter where he is, how old he is, if he's young in his career, midway through WCW 2000, his theme song hits, he comes out with the 2x4, he's going to get a pop.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah,
there
I
was
love Hacksaw, man.
who couldn't love Hacksaw?
Hacksaw was sorry, bro. Let's not forget, just that's a good point you
Hmm,
bring up. Hacksaw continued wrestling in WWE up until like 2008, man. Like
isn't that mad?
everybody loves Hacksaw, bro. Like,
There was a nice stalemate between the two early on here. I loved when Hacksaw finally hit a clothesline that had some sort of effect. Bam Bam
yeah.
Bigelow's snap bump was ferocious,
Mm,
really good. Um, Hacksaw, when he hits his punches on Bigelow, Bigelow knows how to rock that head back with those punches and sells it good to make Hacksaw look like he's a real bad mamma jammer.
yeah. And the
The injured ribs
arms.
to Hacksaw were the story of the match. Gonna have to give another shout out to Bobby the Brain Heenan. JR was talking about how, Hacksaw will never quit. But then Bobby said he's known as a quitter in Glen Falls. He was the, he was the wimp of the town, I hear. Such a lie. Such a fucking lie. Bobby Heenan going into business for himself. Brilliant. Hacksaw finally hit that scoop slam after a while, went for a 3-point stance, hit the top turnbuckle, missed, but then he copped that big headbutt from the top from Bam Bam. And it was over. I thought it was a great match. And it got Bam Bam over because, Hacksaw is a big boy, formidable opponent. Bam Bam goes through. What I liked about this version of the show that we watched here, Juicy Boy, was once again, it was the version of the show that is not on the network. So it is the version that has all the stuff that was cut out, which is like seeing 1-900-288 King
Mm.
live on the hotline here, listening to the wrestlers talking. Terry Taylor in charge of the hotline. Terry, what's going on? And Terry was there with Crush, the Steiner Brothers, and the Smoking Guns, and he wanted to get that first fan through on the phone. And as soon as Cheryl's on the phone, and all the rest, hey, Cheryl, and Cheryl asked her question. I thought it was funny. They're all talking. Terry wants the scoop. Some fan next up did not answer when he said his name, so then JR quickly chimed in to cut away from it. And I'm sure JR will remember those kind of moments later on with, welcome, you're on Live Wire. Yeah, what's your comment or question? I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Hunter and I think Goldust will beat Hunter for the
Oh
belt.
God.
And oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, here we go. Anyway, let's move forward. Okay, it's time for Lex Luger and Tatanka here, the narcissist Lex Luger. So he's still not become the red, white, and blue Lex Luger. So this was an interesting one. Uh, First thing I thought was that big fucking mirror that they have for Lex Luger, they got to lug that thing around just for Lex to quickly pose in it during his entrance. That was a massive, massive mirror. And then they had to like try and find a way to get that thing out the ring when they first started brawling to begin the match. You could see in the background that it was a bit of a task, but you know, E for effort with the WWF back at the time. I love the spot where they were trying to get Lex to wear the protective elbow pad because of his screws in his arm that had been knocking people out left, right, and center. And if he doesn't wear it, he'll be eliminated. He gets upset. I will say Tatanka's theme song, fantastic theme song. I'll try and omit some pointless notes here, but I really liked when the match began. Lex started posing in front of the mirror after the match had begun, and it's like how narcissistic do you have to be when there's an active live person who wants to fight you in the ring and you still go look in the mirror and pose?
That's the
Very
whole
funny.
point. He doesn't like he's a narcissist.
This is this is why I love wrestling. Bobby Heenan, okay, bro, he's killing me. Okay, he's making fun of Tatanka, and he said, "Many moon come before I win match." And that's not the first thing that he says that could get him cancelled. This is 1993, so it's okay to be funny like that. They crossed to Bam Bam to see who his thoughts were on who he wanted to win the match. He clearly wanted Tatanka to win because they were feuding. And I thought Tatanka was going to win. I was not aware that Bam Bam had a bye. Okay. Again with Bobby, this will get you cancelled in 2024. Tatanka was in pain on the ground. And the referee was asking if he was okay. And Bobby Heenan said, "Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you?" Doing a Native American chant. "Hey, how are you?" That is like total humor that my granddad would come up with too.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, bro. "Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
Hey,
I
how
mean,
are you?"
yeah.
But yeah, look, Lex and Tatanka were both undefeated going into this. So, you know, that makes you rub your hands together thinking, who's going to win this fucking thing? I knew though it was going to go to a draw when they mentioned that we were at the 11-minute mark. The time limit hit. Both eliminated. Bigelow goes to the final, gets a bye. Luger screams for 5 more minutes. The referee screaming no, and then Luger pulls down the elbow pad and knocks Tatanka the fuck out.
Yeah.
Very good stuff. Juicy Boy, your thoughts?
Yeah, so once again, we have a match that's got a story to it that they continue building upon. I thought that I loved the way that they started the match off hot with Tatanka attacking him. I mean, we've been saying, especially lately on this channel, that Lex Luger is one of those guys who's underrated because this match went the full 15-minute time limit, and this was a hell of a match. It started out hot with Tatanka really whooping Lex's ass. These guys had great chemistry. Watching this, I disagree heavily with the later idea to turn Lex into the big baby face because he clearly is more comfortable as a heel, and he clearly was just way more in his element in this narcissist gimmick that he was doing at the time. I think that him and Tatanka really had actually a real good flow in the ring. I thought they were just really clicking on all cylinders. The pace of this match impressed me. The fact that there was such a sense of desperation on the part of both guys to win the match. I love the fact that you had 2 undefeated guys going in and then they protected both guys, but they didn't really shortchange the audience. They protected both guys with the finish, but it was both guys just neither one was able to get the win because they just kept going. It's almost like if this had been the finals with the 30-minute time limit, we might have seen a winner. And then continuing the match, It's a nice touch with Luger to be the one to demand the 5 more minutes, which the crowd popped for. So it's kind of like signposting that Luger is just hungry to compete and feels like, I don't need this elbow that everyone's talking about, So it's almost like it's kind of hinting at something to come in the future. But then, of course, when he's not given what he wants, he does the dastardly thing and smashes Tatanka across the head with the surgically repaired elbow. Again, now you've got Lex getting involved with Tatanka a little bit. There'll probably be a follow-up match to that. I'm not sure. I gave the match a B plus. Um, yeah, I was really impressed with. I don't want to say impressed because I always knew he could have a good match, but I continued to be impressed with just like the quality of Lex Luger's work. I think he's actually really did well, and I think
Mark for Luger Mark.
Yeah, shut up. And Tatanka, great talent as well.
I think Luger's better as a babyface, to be honest with you. But if you thought he was in his element as the narcissist, that's nice too. That's fine, no problem. Moving forward, Juicy Boy, Mean Gene backstage. You know what? 2 hours 45 minutes, Juicy Boy. The amount of times we got to go backstage to Mean Gene, all the matches that were on this show, they all seem to get a pretty good amount of time. Nothing needs to go 18, 20, 22 minutes and 2 hours, 45 minutes. And we get all these interviews. Mean Gene with Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart. Both of them, Bret and Perfect, are baby faces at this stage. Mean Gene, dude. Okay, I'm going to be honest. Mean Gene, he caused some shit here. This was on Mean Gene making them bicker.
He
made them bicker by saying,
never...
"Hey, Bret, no, you said that you probably prefer to wrestle Mr. Perfect because you think he might be the easier." It's like, no, that's not what I said.
Not what,
I really enjoyed this though.
But that's not what Gene said.
No, Gene was shit stirring, bro.
Gene didn't even get to finish the sentence before
Mr. Perfect.
Before Mr. Perfect got to started getting pissed off. And then Gene started trying to back. So this was an outstanding pre-match promo. They ended up kind of like Bret at first was like, look, I was trying to pay you a compliment. I think you're a really good technical wrestler. I think I can really test my mettle against you. Mr. Perfect's like, well, I don't really, basically was like, I don't give a crap about that. I'm going to be the king of the ring, I'm not a slouch.
Gene was shit stirring, bro. Okay? He was shit stirring. So, they started bickering, and then Gene, on the fact that he went, "Gentlemen, please," like, Gene, you started the argument, and you're trying to get them to calm down.
So it starts escalating like that, and
then they argued about their dads.
Bret eventually gets annoyed and was like, well,
my father never lost to Larry the Axe. My
father never. he goes, my dad never lost to your dad, and then Mr. Perfect goes, don't ever say that your dad could beat my dad. Your dad never beat my dad. So
it's like 2 kids in the schoolyard.
One of them has to be lying because I'm pretty sure.
And then Bret brought up SummerSlam in 1991.
So I haven't forgotten about SummerSlam. But again, see, we can laugh at that, but that is actually a good, like 91 and 93, that would have been within recent memory. So he's bringing up the past. So then we get to the actual match. I love the fact that the promo took place right before they walked out, and then Bret's music starts and he walks off, and Perfect's still talking into the camera, and the camera stayed on him until he was finished talking. Now they've started to bring back more of that in this current WWE regime, and I think it's a good thing because it's effective. So then they go out there. So now the audience is kind of with this right from the confrontation backstage leading into the match. So both guys get in the ring. The match starts. I gave this match an A+, and a Juicy Boy recommendation.
Lovely. Why did you do the point?
Yeah, it was pretty much like it's possibly the best match under the length of 20 minutes that I've ever seen. Like, it was that good. It was fast paced. It was technical. They were trying to get the advantage constantly throughout the match. It felt tit for tat, but at the same time, both guys weren't employing the exact same strategy. It was absolutely just probably the best match on the show, and there's a reason why Brett's performance is in this pay-per-view is considered a classic career highlight of his. And I think this match is probably a large part of that in itself. I think that just what an outstanding showcase of what both guys were able to do in the ring. And I think that when Brett talks about the fact that he was overlooked at that time, and perhaps people like Mr. Perfect were being overlooked unfairly, I think maybe he's right in that. I think like the fact that what they did in the match was just outstanding. It would hold up in any era, basically.
Every Kurt Hennig Bret Hart match is just fucking, come on. That's like the template of a fucking pay-per-view match, right? Come on. Every time. SummerSlam, King of the Ring, even in WCW, every time they touched magic. It's a shame that they didn't have another 20. Because you know what? This match, different than the SummerSlam match, not the same match. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah. Different.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, bro, the psychology of what happened in the first match of the tournament continued on into the next match, right? Brett's fingers were taped up, right? They mentioned that on commentary at the beginning. I've seen this match before, okay? I know it's a classic, but I hadn't seen it in maybe about 10 years, I reckon. I went through a big phase about 10 years ago watching every Bret Hart fucking pay-per-view match. The arm drags, the side headlock takedowns when Hennig's charging at him. Macho and JR on Heenan for causing an adverse effect on Perfect's career. Fantastic stuff. Got to give the commentary shout outs when I can. The chaining looked real every single time. Commentary again kept on talking about Bam Bam getting a rest. But the match was art, right? One thing I noticed, and I don't even know if these guys even implemented this in the match plan, but Mr. Perfect was a babyface in this match. The old Mr. Perfect came out like muscle memory trying to deal with Bret Hart, so he started acting a bit like a heel. Muscle memory. It's true to life, right? When Bret got flung off the ring apron onto the railing and to that cooler that was full of cans of Pepsi. Brilliant. A memorable moment. Hennig going to the top rope is such a rare sighting. The missile dropkick wasn't a perfect looking dropkick. It was an ugly dropkick, but it makes sense because Mr. Perfect never goes to the top rope. We get some rope breaks. Hennig is desperate to win. Hennig getting his leg worked on. Hennig is the best at selling when there is a submission hold locked in on him. When I saw him have that figure four leg lock locked in on him, the flailing of the hair, the hands shaking, pleading, no, I don't want to give up. I've never seen anyone do it better than him, as far as I'm concerned. Again, looking at this and taking a step back, Bret is having the best night, and he is proving here that Hogan was the wrong way to go. Hogan is probably watching this, or probably not, but probably hearing and probably knowing that it's definitely time for him to go because his time is up, because it's a new era, right? He could be able to keep up with this. Mr. Perfect, small little things. He's in pain because of his knee. He's smacking his leg trying to get some feeling back in it. You don't see stuff like that anymore. Mr. Perfect getting reversed into the corner and he poled himself on the ring post. I've never seen anyone do it quite that good. Christian does it pretty good too, but not many people do that spot as well as Mr. Perfect. I think he might have been the first one to do it. Anyway, Bret going for that sharpshooter. We remember Jooseyboy. We remember at the beginning of the match them talking about his taped up fingers. He goes for the sharpshooter. He goes to lock it in. Mr. Perfect grabs those fingers and squeezes Jooseyboy. Bret screaming in pain. He grabbed the fingers to avoid being locked into that that sharpshooter because what? What happened in 91? He knows. He knows once it's in, it's over. Brett with that inside cradle reversal. What a great finish. Didn't beat Mr. Perfect decisively. Beat him because he was a little bit smarter, a little bit quicker at one stage, and it still protected Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was livid, but how nice is that moment at the end of the match where Mr. Perfect, even though he's pissed off, he gets in the ring and he shakes Brett's hand. And that's like, yeah, that's
Which
what
he
I'm
wouldn't
talking about
shake
with a
it in the
handshake.
promo before either.
No,
So they set that up as well. That Brett,
it's
like
beautiful.
Perfect put his hand out in the promo backstage, and Brett, even though Perfect had already started being a dickhead, was still going to take it because he's that kind of guy, and Perfect didn't give it to him. So it's
Yep.
like Brett earned his respect with that. All right, next match.
All right. Before we get there, though, Terry Taylor's in the crowd, bro.
All
When it
right,
cuts
well,
back
no,
to the old footage.
well, just hang on though. I watched that, and I watched the segment with Terry Taylor, and I was just thinking that we just should no one should ever speak of it because it was just so cringy.
No, but
And
he was interviewing young Wesley in the crowd, who I think might have had the highest pitched voice of any young man I've ever heard in my life. And their fans gave their votes on the Hogan match. Okay, let's just keep
ugh,
moving forward.
ugh.
Time for Hogan's last ever 1990s WWF interview backstage. We're getting towards WrestleMania 10 at this point. I mean, it's just after WrestleMania 9, but we're getting towards WrestleMania 10 within the next year. Hogan's the champion, and it's just totally time for him to sail off into the sunset. We've heard these promos from Hogan since before WrestleMania 1. So this is over 10 years. So when you watch this at this point, and how long can you hear that spiel from Hogan about the Hulkamaniacs and Hulkamaniacs running wild, brother? The ego and the man to want to win the belt at WrestleMania 9. You know what? It's just rude. And beating Yoko in 30 seconds when he was undefeated at that point is bullshit. Anyway, let's get to Yoko and Hogan, okay, DJ?
Well,
Juicy boy.
that's not just yet. Like I think that promo as well. It's not only is it similar to what Hogan's always done, because you could argue that The Rock always cuts a similar promo,
Of
or
course.
Stone Cold always cuts a similar promo. I would argue that the difference is what the promo is about. And I think at this point, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the fact that the formula that used to work so well for Hogan, I don't like using that term formula because it oversimplifies what Hogan's best qualities as a performer actually were, which was to maximize getting the most out of doing the least, which I don't think he should be criticized for. I think it's
I don't
bullshit.
either.
So, but I think what we have when I watch this promo here, it's a sense of WWF as a company wants Hogan to put Yoko over. Part of me thinks that Bruce Pritchard's just totally full of shit, and the reason why Hogan won the belt the way that he did at WrestleMania 9
Was it
was
the European
because.
tour?
Oh, hang on. What I think was, though, was that Hogan wouldn't agree to do this match unless he had a win over Yoko and he knew he was going to leave to go and try his hand at the movies and stuff. So it's very possible that that may have been sort of a concession, or it may well have just been that they thought it would be a bigger deal for Hogan to have the title when Yoko beat him. But I sort of feel like I don't necessarily know if Brett would have been the better title opponent, because I think that him becoming King of the Ring was the way to go. But yeah, getting to the match itself, bro, the crowd still liked Hogan. I think that there
Oh
was
yeah,
still,
definitely.
I think there was still support for him. I think people still enjoyed him. There still is that star quality there, but it feels like the company more than the company was moving on, and I think that yes, part of it is Hogan was getting a bit stale and he hadn't quite realized yet that that was happening. But Hogan first won the WWF title in 1984, and this was 1993, so it's only 9 years later. We see people like John Cena and Roman Reigns stay on top for much longer than that in the modern era. But nonetheless, I think that the company was changing very fast at this time.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so Yokozuna and Hogan, they have this match. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance to Yoko's entrance, with the Japanese entrance and the salt being thrown down and everything like that. And they even though Yokozuna is of Samoan descent and he's not actually Japanese, I feel as though they gave him this gimmick because they wanted to utilize the elements of sumo and Japanese wrestling culture that they respected. You hear them talking about, this is going to be a major deal if Yokozuna can win this championship over in Japan because he represents Japan, as far as the context of this story goes. Hogan kind of almost cut the promo that we were just talking about in a way. I noted something he said. He said, I am going to remain WWF champion. And it was almost throwaway, like he expected to just roll through another big guy. He didn't really do that. He basically got dominated for a great deal of this match. Yokozuna wasn't really going as full tilt as Yokozuna was capable of, because even though Yokozuna may seem like the perfect opponent for 80s Hogan, and he probably was, he also was a wrestler of the 90s and beyond. He was only 34 when he passed away in the year 2000. So
fuck.
Think about how much
I'm older than him.
Yeah, think about how much longer he could have continued into the modern era. And so we would continue to learn that Yokozuna was just such a great wrestler. But he really had Hogan's match here. And I don't even say that in a bad way. I've seen this pay-per-view once before. I really didn't care for the match. I thought it was quite boring. And the match still is, on this viewing, plotting, but I wouldn't say boring. Because I think the combination of the commentators selling the story of like, well, Yokozuna, he's on the uprise in the WWF, and he was very close to having that WWF title coming out of WrestleMania 9. And Hogan at the same time has always been Hulk Hogan, but then Bobby is hinting, and Randy Savage a little bit are kind of hinting, well, everyone eventually hits their end. Savage is kind of saying, like, they're kind of hinting without saying it that Hogan might have reached his limit as far as, Father Time beats nobody, and Yokozuna being this young, hungry beast. So with that in mind, the actual physical stuff in the ring was a far sight less than what we would see throughout the rest of the show. It was a lot of Hogan selling, Hogan taking a few slams, Yoko using that power. But that's the kind of match that they were going to do, and they did it well. We've talked about on this channel before, bro, like, as fans, we like variety on shows, at least you and I personally, and we enjoy different matches for the different matches that they are. And I think I enjoyed watching this. I think that it was definitely the right decision to have Yokozuna win the match. It would have been just the end of Yokozuna's career, potentially.
Agreed.
Had they not had him win the match. I really enjoyed watching it. I think the fans' shock at the finish was really something that added to this. When Hogan took the pin, you noticed Yoko nails him after he takes the photographer flash in the eyes, which, by the way, I'll circle that quickly. I liked the fact that, because the first thing you might think is, how come for the first time in history there's all these photographers around the ring for a Hulk Hogan match? When there never is for any other matches of this kind, there's usually just the one or two ringside photographers. They accounted for that masterfully by just saying, well, this is a huge representative of Japan, and Hulk Hogan, of course, and this is a true fact, is a huge star in Japan as well. And we've seen when Hogan has wrestled over in Japan, there is an army of photographers at ringside because it's unusual that he wrestles over there comparatively. So I thought that was a nice touch of explaining here's why we have this small entourage of Japanese photographers here.
Mm.
They explained that because this will be significant in the world of Japanese sports as compared to the other matches we were going to be seeing on the show. So, with that in mind, later on, one of the photographers gets on the apron. I think it was Bobby Heenan might have actually been the one to say, that's kind of dangerous for him to get up on the apron just to try to get a good shot, isn't it? Like something like that. And then before anyone could respond to that, the flashbulb goes off. It was implied later on that this was perhaps a purposeful thing on the part of Mr. Fuji and Yokozuna, that they had this orchestrated, but no one confirmed that for sure, which is a key detail because we're continuing this on. So the flashbulb, either accidentally or by design, goes off in Hulk Hogan's face right when he's doing his classic Hulk Hogan comeback on Yokozuna. Yokozuna nails him, slams him, hits the ropes, hits the leg drop on Hulk Hogan, pins Hulk Hogan with his own finishing leg drop. When that 3 went down, you could see that adults, everyone in the arena was quite shocked that Hulk Hogan did not win this match.
Mm.
The announcements go on. Howard Finkel says that Yokozuna is now the WWF champion. At that point, you start hearing people start booing like it's now set in that Hulk Hogan has lost this match. And people have seen that it was a screwy finish as well, which they also probably didn't like. So then they cut to a couple of children in the audience who don't look happy at all. They mention that, there are now some kids crying in the audience because don't forget, as much as people were hating on Hogan, the little kids always love the top baby faces, because they're innocent, man. They just get into it for what it is. So the kids are upset at what's happened to Hogan. And then, just to add the insult to injury, Yokozuna grabs Hogan by the arm, drags him over the turnbuckle, and hits a bonsai drop on him, basically for no reason, basically just to be villainous and put the old WWF champion out of commission.
To end Hulkamania.
Ended Hulkamania, at least for the time being there. I really liked the finish of this. I thought it was well done. It just makes me realize even more just how full of shit Bruce Pritchard is, because when he talks about this whole period of time in Hogan's career, it's just it's so obvious that Hogan was on the way out and the WWF didn't know how to deal with one of their big stars moving on to more mainstream popularity without them being able to control him. So there was clearly a lot of complex bullshit going on backstage. Nonetheless, they managed to, I think Hogan did a great job putting over Yokozuna here. And I think Yoko also did a great job in paying the respect to Hogan, having Hogan's match, working at his pace while still looking good, making Hogan look good. Great job by both guys on this part, despite what you want to say about Hogan, and there is plenty you can say. C- from Jooseyboy. I enjoyed this WWF title match, and I like the fact that it wasn't on in the main event slot. All right.
Very nice, bro. Very nice, bro. There we go, everyone. That's Jooseyboy's Iron Man match length review of the Hogan Yoko match. We're already an hour and 5 minutes into this review. Who gives a shit? This will be the only time we ever review this. This was a moment in time, Jooseyboy. Seeing Hogan come out, I knew that you could tell that there were a bunch of Hulkamaniacs in attendance there. He was soaking it in as he entered, but his time had come and gone. Okay. There was a reason why this was one of, there were a few before this, but one of the first times that WWF title match was not the main event. We all knew why, because he would not be able to follow the rest of this tournament, even though actually he could not follow the previous parts of the tournament. So look, one thing I wanted to comment on Bobby Heenan. He said he was commenting on the Japanese photographers at ringside, and he said the last time I saw this many Japanese people was Benny Hanna's. Yoko in charge early. Looks Hogan sells and sells and sells and doesn't do too much. But to use a Juicy Boy style word here, the juxtaposition between Hogan's deal and Brett at King of the Ring was very interesting to me. Despite that, people were still popping for Hogan's easygoing shtick. I liked Yoko's selling of Hogan attempting to clothesline him with the flailing arms and nearly teetering over, but not. I thought it was a fun match, to be honest with you. Look, a match like this is always going to get a few bear hugs here and there. We still get the same old Hulk up thing, and it's like, yeah, by 93, the Hulk up after being crushed with a side belly to belly suplex by Yokozuna. By this point, it's like, okay, you know what? I've had enough of this. I can imagine that's what people would think. Anyway,
Yeah.
several big boots. Yoko didn't go down. Loved seeing Yoko finally hitting that leg drop on Hogan to win after the photographer flashed that flame in Hogan's face. Of course, Hogan couldn't just lose. No, he had to have fire hit him in the eyeballs to lose the match. One thing I'll say is I really like the fact that he did hit that bonsai drop on Hogan because it really felt like it signified the end of Hulkamania. I typed Hulkamania is dead, and then Heenan said it just after I typed the word dead. So there we go. A moment in time. I really enjoyed the match despite what it was, but it was again a moment in time, and Hogan was not going to be there any longer. So let's move forward anyway, Juicy Boy. HBK. Well, he has an interview backstage, and Big Daddy Cool Diesel was in the background, and he's introduced as Diesel for the first time. One thing I will say from this interview that I did find interesting, I try to say interesting and Juicy Boy at the same time then. Interesting was the fact that Sean was like, well, Hulk Hogan is like, he's like a dinosaur, and he called him a dinosaur because you know what, HBK is bringing in that new generation bitch once Hogan's gone. So I thought it was quite interesting that he said that at that point, and I wonder, I don't know if they did, but I hope that they remembered that when Hogan and Sean feuded years later in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, they didn't reference that
They
at all.
didn't. Damn it,
No,
bro.
not at
That's
all.
just
Not in any
perfect, right?
way. Not even once.
They should have had, you know what, brother? I remember what you said last night in the King of the Ring in
How
93,
petty would
brother.
Hogan have to be to,
Yeah, but he would be, right? Surely. Anyway.
he would have already left the building, bro. He's already eaten strawberries in a limo by the time Shawn Michaels is
Look,
coming.
unfortunately, bro, we've still got 3 matches left. But you know what? 2 hours, 45 minutes for a show with a whole tournament starting at quarterfinals, and there's an 8-man tag and an IC title match and the finals for the tournament, and of course the WWF title match. What do you know? Money Inc. Steiners and Smoking Guns come out, and then I'm just laughing because here comes Money Inc. with that fucking great theme song. Bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dun, dun, dun. Money, 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 money. And of course, the head shrinkers are the opponents. Okay, there's an 8-man tag here, Juicy Boy. I want to know your thoughts. Money Inc., Head Shrinkers, Steiner Brothers, Smoking Guns.
Yeah, to me, this is the kind of stuff that uh brings the WWF product from that time down. I think that if you're not going to find a way to it's the same problem as today. It's just clear that they shoved 2 heel tag teams and 2 babyface teams into this match. By virtue of the fact that it happened 30 years ago, at least it was treated more seriously than, say, like by the 2000s, you might have a match like this get given 2 minutes time on TV and nobody plays up to their character and nobody does anything. At least there was still some attempt to have a match here. I'd give it a C minus. I was kind of just waiting for it to be over, though. It's one of those things that, yeah, even at this time in such a different era, they've always had that need to just shove an extra match in there.
Shoehorn.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, when this came up, I was like, please, we don't need any more. But I guess they wanted to, do something with the tag team. I don't know. The only notes I really had was like it was weird for me seeing the fact that Ted DiBiase wrestled Scott Steiner. I was like, I never thought I'd see Scott Steiner and Ted DiBiase work together. And it's always interesting seeing a little version of Rikishi. Popped for copying and calling. He said the IRS went to the University of Wall Street, and then JR was like, Syracuse, dickhead. Like the University of Wall Street, for fuck's sake. He's the brain. Anyway, again, thinking Billy Gunn was wrestling back here, and he's still wrestling now, and all of these guys are retired pretty much now. Very interesting. I liked seeing Arthur at ringside acting like a crazy cunt, as usual. I miss when they had like dads of wrestlers involved in the business,
Just
like
managers
when
in
Randy Orton's
general.
dad, Cowboy Bob Orton, was on TV with him, or Chavo Classic, bro. Like I love that shit. Um, anyway, Ted is one of those last guys from that early WrestleMania era, who was still working hard at the stage, and I found it surprising that Billy Gunn beat Ted with an inside cradle. So interesting stuff. Anyway, look, Juicy Boy, let's move forward, okay? Again, they cut back some old footage. Terry Taylor with 1900 288 King. A fan asked Razor about the 123 kid, and as he was trying to answer, Bam Bam Bigelow would not shut the fuck up at the same time, which I thought was funny. Anyway, again, let's move forward. Interview. Jack Tunney's there with Yoko and Mr. Fuji, and Mr. Fuji is fucking chuffed, Juicy Boy. They have all this time on this show, 2 hours, 45 minutes, all these matches for all these interviews. And we've had several moments where Mr. Fuji had the chance to talk and he's laughing. Hulkamania is dying. He's so happy. It really is amazing. And look, let's be honest, Mr. Fuji finally killed Hulkamania. So what do you think of Mr. Fuji, Juicy Boy? Come on, you must have loved a bit of that.
Well, everybody loves Mr. Fuji. Yeah.
Can't not love him.
I
Anyway,
don't approve of his dog cooking policy, but I do approve of his salt throwing policy.
I do approve of his ribs that he would pull. But anyway, let's move forward. IC title match. Again, you might feel the same way that I did. Juicy, be like, oh, God, another thing in the way of Brett versus Bam Bam. Shawn Michaels, well, taking on Crush here. Yeah. Crush was the opponent here. As many may know, Brian Adams, who was in WCW. No, not the vocalist. But you know what? Look, at least the IC title was on the line on this pay-per-view. After seeing Crush, when I've seen Brian Adams from WCW, way quicker and way blonder. Sean obviously selling so well. I bet he saw what Brett was doing earlier in the show and knew he had to step it up a bit. I thought he really stepped it up well. Bobby Heenan again said something rude about Crush, and JR said he was going to relay that information to Crush, and Bobby backpedaled so quickly about what he said. He's a fantastic color commentator anyway. Not much else to say here other than, Diesel showed his worth at ringside. Saw Crush turn up more than he ever did in WCW, but that's because he was, quite a bit younger. I think he joined WCW in 97, so there's 4 years after this. The Doinks came out to get involved, which led to Crush getting super kicked in the back of the head, and HBK got the win and retained. Juicy Boy, thoughts?
Yeah, surprisingly awesome work by Crush. I think that, again, this just shows the level that was expected out of everybody on the roster that was going to be on pay-per-view at the time. You could tell that, it's a big deal now still, but you could really tell that everyone on the show was very, very hungry to really make sure that they were given another opportunity to get back onto another one. So I think that's what you saw here from Crush. I really enjoyed his work. Shawn Michaels, always tremendous. Not quite at the level of work that he would reach by like 1996. You can still see there's less of the fluidity and the smoothness that would definitely be there. It's there, but it's not quite at its peak yet. So it's interesting to go back and look at. And I gave the match B minus. I enjoyed the two doinks coming out with the cigars. They kind of mirrored each other's movements. Crush got distracted. I like the fact that Shawn Michaels just took advantage, hit his finisher, and won the match. That's what you would do in real life. For all the talk about characters and stuff like that, it makes way more sense than anything you see on AEW. Boom. All right.
Okay, bro. Before we get to the main event, I know we've got a long time now, but I already pre-planned this, so I might as well do it. I'm going to read you some facts, okay? If you wanted to give a sentence of thoughts or not, or if you just say, oh, that's interesting, then let's do it, okay? First interesting fact of King of the Ring 1993, okay? In a dark match, Papa Shango defended the USWA Championship against Owen Hart. Were you aware of that?
I have heard about that match before. I think that probably would have been pretty interesting.
Definitely. Another fun fact, apparently, because of the headsets at commentary, Savage, JR, and Heenan could not hear each other properly. So there were moments where they interrupted each other while they were talking. And I actually did notice that, but now I've figured out through reading this that they actually couldn't really hear each other properly because of technical difficulties. Did you know that, Juicy Boy?
No, I did not. I don't know why anyone would want to go out of their way to know that, but here we
These
are.
are the fun facts, bro. Okay. So
Fun, interesting
Brett
going.
wrestled these three matches at King of the Ring 93, which was 47 minutes and 32 seconds in total. But did you know the night earlier he wrestled at Madison Square Garden against Bob Backlund in a match that went more than 32 minutes in length? And it was Backlund's first pinfall loss ever at the Gardens. So in one day, he had four matches totaling 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 53 seconds. And he actually injured his ankle during the match. So he had an injured ankle during the three matches at King of the Ring, which makes it even more impressive, right?
Useless fact, but man, I'd love to see that match between him and Backlund.
I would too. You know, it is a useless fact, but it's so interesting that he had an injured ankle going to those three matches. Anyway, a couple more here. Did you know that the guy who was portraying the Japanese photographer with the flames shooting out of the camera was actually one Harvey Whippleman?
That's not a surprise at all.
Again, so we're talking about how Hogan, this is his last time in the WWF, but he actually pulled out of the scheduled bunch of dates after this house shows in Chicago and Boston. And he performed the sizable tour of Europe in July and August, and his actual last official match in WWE was August 6th, 1993, defeating Yokozuna by DQ in Sheffield, England. So yeah, he couldn't just lose, could he? Okay, so after that, apparently Bret Hart angrily confronted Hulk Hogan during the show, and I'm sure you've heard of this, Juicy Boy.
Mm.
But he'd been led to believe that Hogan will be dropping the championship to him at SummerSlam, and Hogan had told Hitman that he would be happy to drop the belt to him after what happened at WrestleMania 9. Shortly before King of the Ring, Hart said that Hogan had played some political chess and was reneging on his promise. So he went into his dressing room and confronted him. And Hogan stood there speechless, and Hart finished off his verbal torrent by telling Hogan that he could go fuck himself. Well done, Hitman. Well done.
The night where he's having that performance, he still found time to at some point be like, "Go fuck
Yeah.
yourself, Terry.
Yeah.
Just go fuck yourself."
Well, you know what? You know, Terry, go fuck. You know, he would have called him Terry as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, also, two more facts. Bret Hart was actually, you know, with the early King of the Rings where you won a match against someone, you became, yeah, apparently Bret actually was already a King of the Ring in 1991. Um, uh, through beating, I think, one of the previous champions. Anyway, also, Bret Hart was legitimately injured by Jerry Lawler in the after-match attack in the main event.
Mm.
Poor Bret, bro. Poor Bret. He got the wooden throne that was thrown on top of him.
Yeah.
He had a hard time taking a deep breath without pain for months after the altercation. Poor
Yeah.
Brett. What a hellacious day for him. Anyway, there are those fun facts from King of the Ring 93. We're getting to an hour and 20 minutes into this review, Juicy Boy. Let's get to the main event of the evening here. Bret the Hitman Hart, Bam Bam Bigelow, King of the Ring finals. Go for it, bro.
Yeah, A- match. It was great the way that it felt like both guys had a reasonable chance of winning the match, and both guys, again, similar to the Lex versus Tatanka match, there was a real sense of desperation from both guys. Um, it wasn't just a case of Bam Bam relying on his power and expecting to win. It was like he also has something to prove. He also wants to become King of the Ring. He's got his own machinations and plans and ideas for where he wants his WWF career to go. So you've got everything from his side at play with everything going on in Bret's career on WWF TV at the time. Uh, and obviously they're going to play up that story that Bam Bam is more fresh and Bret has really been put through the ringer by the time we got to this match. Nonetheless, it was still a very physical, very fast-paced match. Bret basically had to see the thing that, and this is why everybody loves Bret Hart, bro, and why he's one of those wrestlers, because he didn't try to lift Bam Bam up. He didn't spend his time trying to hit all of his usual moves on Bam Bam. Instead, he tried to use holds. He tried to cut Bam Bam down to size. And that in turn only made it all the more menacing when Bam Bam would take control of the match. Um, you've got this big 300-pounder who is fresher than Bret Hart, who has shown on many occasions that he's capable of a great deal of athleticism. And, you've already got a depleted Bret Hart who's a lot smaller than Bam Bam. So even if both these guys weren't really good in the ring in their own right, I think the story itself was intriguing, as well. But you've got the story, and then you had both guys really going out there, especially Bret, and trying to put on an absolute clinic. Loved the victory roll finish. Uh, Loved the way that Bam Bam was just so caught off guard by it because I don't think anyone had done it within recent memory on WWF TV. So it was almost like a fresh move or a forgotten move from the past that Bret pulled out at the last minute to get the win over Bam Bam.
Mm.
So, Bam Bam had sort of, I don't want to say he had an out. He lost the match clean, but at the same time, he was caught by the pin, similar to Mr. Perfect, but he was just caught in a different situation.
Yeah.
Both both matches involved Bret catching a quick pin from the defensive position. Only in this case, Bam Bam's size was simply used against him. He was thrown off balance. Whereas in the other case, Mr. Perfect was just caught by his over eagerness. And yeah, didn't cinch that small package in enough because anyone that's ever done any wrestling, if you cinch it in really tight, then they don't have enough force to roll and switch the weight because
Yeah.
their legs would be trapped. Um, so yeah, really good. I thought it was a great. Not only was it a great match by itself for the finals of the tournament, but it was also a great final chapter to the 3-match arc that Bret Hart went through on this pay-per-view. And I'll follow up and comment on the angle afterwards as well. I love the fact that they go over there. Bret is presented with the scepter and the crown, but he doesn't just suddenly pretend that he loves the idea of being King of the Ring just because it's King of the Ring. And luckily, they've started to kind of get away from that with the most recent King of the Ring. But as most people would know, the King of the Ring in probably the last 20 years almost, yeah, 20 years literally, has been nobody cares about being the king of the ring or has
Yeah.
any element of their personality that would suggest that they would want to be treated like a big deal. But then the king of the ring tournament starts, and whoever wins it, they either adopt the gimmick of being the king literally, which they've done about 3 times, which is so annoying, or they don't adopt the gimmick of being king, but they go around acting all flashy and showing off because they're king of the ring. Here in this context, he gets given the crown and the scepter, but it's just a ceremonial trophy that he knows he has to accept because he's won the tournament. He
Yeah.
doesn't go and act like, oh, I love this
Yeah.
crown and I've got the scepter and stuff. He has it on him and it looks out of place, but it's like an athlete that's winning the trophy. He probably doesn't care about the trinket itself or the scepter. He just cares about having proven himself and proven his medal, as he obviously looks towards that WWF championship in his near future. Now, you have Jerry the King Lawler come out, recently signed with the company. Obviously, to put things in perspective, Jerry the King Lawler was 45 years old at this time. CM Punk is currently 45 years old. So I just want to kind of put that in perspective, the difference in where people are in their careers relative to their age and stuff between, the older era and the current era. So here he comes, Jerry the King Lawler. Uh, he gets in Brett's face, and at first it's kind of a little silly because, or it's shown that Brett sort of sees it as a little silly because Jerry comes out, he's dressed up in his king's robe and his king's crown. He starts saying to Brett, he's the only king and all this different crap. And obviously, any sane person would be like, you're delusional, dude. It's a tournament. It's about who's the best on the roster. It's not about literally being a king. And no one would take that seriously. And Brett doesn't really take it seriously because Brett's character is a very sensible, rational character. But then the angle takes a very almost like a dark turn, like a very violent turn because Jerry Lawler has that kind of comedic energy to him a lot of the time when he plays up the heel, especially in the WWF part of his career. And he's kind of doing that for a while. Everyone's kind of having a chuckle. You got these two guys that are both wearing crowns and both have capes draped over them. It's kind of bemusing, right? You know, Jerry's going on about being the true king in this deluded, over the top fashion. And it's like, oh, what a knobhead, right? Then all of a sudden he starts attacking Brett, and it's a violent attack.
Yeah.
He hits him really hard in the stomach with that scepter. He, as Carl alluded to earlier, throws that very heavy chair right over Brett's back when Brett's on his hands and knees. And you can see the bottom of that thing where the legs attached to just go right across the small of Brett's back. And the chair breaks. So you can imagine what that probably felt like because you can see it took some effort for Jerry to lift it up. Jerry really roughly kicks the shit out of Brett and then kicks him down, deliberately positions him in front of the steps leading up to the podium just so he can kick him down. Really venomous expression on Jerry's face. Um, and it put across the sense that, okay, he looks very pompous and very up himself and all this shit, but there is something going on that's deeper than this tournament between Jerry Lawler and Bret Hart. Jerry Lawler obviously has this seething resentment and anger towards Bret Hart that's coming out in this beatdown. So even though WWF at the time has this reputation for being very cheesy, um, this was not cheesy. This started out like it was trying to make you think that it was going to be a bit of fun at King of the Ring, and then it took a more sinister turn, as I'm sure you'll get into with your review. And I really liked that angle, and I loved the way that the commentators discussed it, and I loved just the choice to finish a pay per view at that time with an angle like that was unique choice for that period of time, and I think that it worked really well. and added even more to the journey that Brett had gone through to win the tournament.
Mm.
To see that moment of celebration be snuffed out in such a cruel and vicious way is really a great cap off to the events of the evening, I thought.
Well, you know what? I prefer that they ended this joyous occasion for him in a way that spoiled the party for Brett. He was about to be given the crown and the scepter, and he didn't even get the chance to enjoy it. Then here we go. We've got a hot
Yeah.
angle to end the show, but I'm not going to really add too much to what I thought of the match, other than Bam Bam Bigelow was so underrated, and
Mm.
I really feel like it's a shame that he never got to be given. Like this show, he was spotlighted. He was given a real spotlight
Yeah.
and a chance, and then we had the thing with him and Lawrence Taylor, and I think maybe Bam Bam probably should have beaten Lawrence Taylor, to be honest with you. But
I think
he
so.
put his hand up to do it. He was the one that wanted to do it. He put Lawrence over like $1 million. Um, I did like the spot where we had a false finish there, and Hebner was adamant that the match continue. Um, and again, Brett's selling when he's in that backbreaker. All good stuff. I don't really need to follow up too much. You really gave a good analysis on the match, bro. So I did like the finish though. That victory roll was very cool. Classic, really. And yeah, Speen Gene proclaims Brett Yee king of the ring. And of course, Lawless shows up because he's the real king. I like that Brett gave him a bit of a hard time. Well, you didn't. Why didn't you enter the tournament then, Jerry? Like, if you're the king, then why don't you didn't even try and enter the
He's
tournament?
already the king. Why should he have to enter it though? Like,
Well, he should take exception to the fact there's a King of the Ring tournament, and he should prove that he's the king by entering it. To be kayfabe in this review here, Juicy Boy. But you know what? That's great. It's great that Jerry got involved there. It's great that the show, after all that, ended on a sour note for the fans. Let's move
yeah.
on to into the sunset. Excuse me, Juicy Boy. I want to know your rating out of 10 for King of the Ring at 1993.
So I gave King of the Ring 1993 an 8.5 out of 10. I didn't want to give it a 9 or a 10 because, uh, the 90s nostalgia effect is there, so you can't overrate it too highly just because you're fond of the period of time. But a great show. And this was a long-winded analysis because I really find it refreshing to be able to discuss wrestling and not have to nitpick it or be exasperated by it because it's not a current product. It's already taken place long ago.
Just
So
taking a look back.
going back and discussing it in the context of the time, knowing what we now know all these years later is just so much fun. And we want to know in the comments below, of course, what you thought of this event.
Also, I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. It might have got a 9. It might have got a 9, but just a few things kind of pulled it down from a 9. Even though my ranking system with my point system here for rating it out of 10 isn't really the most intricate art form ever, like Meltzer's apparently 5 stars is, but 8.5 out of 10. I agreed as soon as you said it, Juicy Boy. So you know what, bro? Had fun taking a look back in a journey through time to King of the Ring 1993, the first ever King of the Ring, before we check out the King and Queen of the Ring from Saudi Arabia. So I'm looking forward to that, my friend.
As am I. I've been keeping apprised of the tournament, and I watched Gunther versus Jey Uso, uh,
Gunta!
which happened today on Raw. So I'm keeping track of it. And
I don't even know who won.
yeah, well, I do, but I'm just not going to spoil it in case anyone hasn't seen it. But yeah, thanks everyone. We
Thank
love
you,
you
everyone.
guys. Love
Remember to
you.
like and subscribe and all that shit.
Yeah,
We will see
yeah,
you all down the road. Is that right, Juicy Boy? Should we see him
yeah,
down the road or not?
yeah.
I don't
We'll
know.
see you down the road.
Okay,
Yeah.
you'll see you down the road. Thank you.